If you missed last week's program, you missed one of the most captivating interviews that we've ever conducted on Fabric of Family. Several years ago, I interviewed a man by the name of Joel Godfrey who talked openly about his struggle with alcohol and how it all came to a head on one fateful night in July of 1990. This week, we continue that interview as Joel tells us about the high cost of low living and how a very poor decision early in his life had such life-altering consequences on so many people. So stay with us, and we'll be back in just a moment.
How do you explain? How do you describe?
In Him, all families are blessed. Join our discussion on Fabric of Family.
On the night of July 25th, 1990, Joel Godfrey was attending a get-together in honor of a friend following a long day at work. While at the party, Joel said he began to drink alcohol along with some other guests. About midnight, he decided it was time to go home, so he went out to his car and he started to drive home. But due to the influence of alcohol and compounded by his long workday, Joel's inhibitions were greatly lowered and he soon dozed off to sleep at the wheel. The results were devastating. His car veered head-on into an oncoming vehicle that was occupied by a young couple and their little children. The next morning, Joel woke up in the hospital with 2 security officers at either side. And it was then that he began to learn of the innocent lives that had been taken through a senseless decision to drink and drive. In our program today, Joel tells the rest of his story, ending with a heartfelt appeal to help others not to make the same mistake that he made. So let's join our interview that's already in progress in our program entitled, A Night to Never Forget. I've often heard that individuals who are involved in drunk driving and in which there's an accident and someone else is killed, I've often heard that people will think, well, why did I live and why did they die? Did you ever go through
First
that?
and foremost, when it first happened, that's all I could think about. Why not me? I was the one that was doing wrong. Why couldn't he have taken my life instead of theirs? And those are things that we'll never know. I mean, you know, I don't know what to say with it. You know, you can't say God planned it that way because we don't know what God knows. I mean, His reasons for things. But yes, I just wish it had been me for a long, long time. I did. I just wish if I could have, at least. I don't know. I think it'd been easier for my family. It would have. And then again, I may be wrong about that. But I do wish, and I did wish for a long, long time, why could it just not have been me? Because I was wrong. They weren't wrong. They were innocent people.
Yeah. Joe, how does it feel to wake up and to know that, I mean, there are consequences to our actions, and that's one of the things that we do talk about here on the Fabric of Family, as these actions have consequences on our family. But, unless someone has been there, it's hard to understand what it's like. What is it like to wake up and to know that because of the choice you made, someone else was killed?
It's sickening. It's totally sickening. Like I said, today, almost 17 years later, I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing hits my mind. And throughout the day, it'll never leave you. It will never, ever leave you. I don't. I wouldn't have been able to make it this long if I hadn't known and believed in my heart what the Bible says, what Jesus said, that He died on the cross for the remission of our sins. If it wasn't for His forgiveness, I don't think I could have carried on. I don't think I could have went on. And But still today, I can't, at times, I can't forgive myself. It just goes on, and I live with that for the rest of my life, I know.
Well, you know, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, he referred to himself as the chief of sinners. He thought back on his own life and thought of the things that he had done, where he persecuted Christians. He had Christians put to death, and he said, I'm the chiefest of sinners. But by the grace of God, you know, he was who he was. I think the same is true concerning you or anyone who is watching this program today, to understand that though we cannot change these sad, tragic events that have occurred in our lives, you know, we can't go back. If the choices we made ended up in someone else losing their life, we can't change that. But we can recognize that we do serve a God who is gracious.
Yes.
And though mankind may not be able to understand that kind of forgiveness and that kind of pardon, God is that kind of God. And we can live every day with the knowledge that His grace has been made available to us through His Son, Jesus Christ.
Right. Now, what would we do without that?
Yeah.
I mean, the very best that we can do each day is not good enough. And I'm just so thankful. I get on my knees each morning and each night. I thank God for that gift of salvation, because were it not for that, I think that, you know, I would be, if not dead myself, I think I would be almost insane.
Yeah.
But through that, I can know that He forgives me, even though sometimes I can't forgive myself.
Well, I tell you what, let's change our direction just a little bit here. And we've talked about some of the events that eventually led to your incarceration. Joel, how many years were you in prison?
Approximately 15 years.
Okay. What did you expect prison to be like?
At first, I can't. I'd have to say that you know, I was scared. I didn't know what prison was like. I knew the jail, but there's a certain thing that has to do with hopelessness. It's kind of like with a person that's sick and a shut-in that may never leave the house again. And, you know, they're not sure of what their future holds. And when you're looking at that kind of time, I mean, and that is not as long as a lot of people have to do. But it just seems like forever. It seems like that as each day passes, that it's never going to end. I honestly thought for years that I'd never live to see the day that I got out. You know, and I tried to write. I tried to keep in touch with my children, and made sure that they knew how sorry I was and how I wish I could be there with them. But
well, what is you know, someone who's never been there, what is a typical day like in prison?
When you first go into prison, whatever you were, you're stripped of it that day. I mean, you walk in, and the only thing that you can take with you, that you can keep, is God's Word. You can take that, thank God. Everything else is taken from you. They strip you of your whatever you were on the street. They shave your head, they take your clothes, they spray you for bugs like an animal. They lock you away and treat you as if you don't even deserve, to be treated as a human being. You deserve to be treated as an animal. And many of them have that attitude. I can't say that they are a few officers that are there for the right reasons. And I'm not saying that prison is not doesn't serve a purpose, they do. I mean, we have to have them. Right. We have to have the law. And if we didn't, imagine what the society would be like.
And I know you would agree that if we violate the law, there's a price that we must pay.
Oh, yes. And I deserve every day that I spent, maybe more.
Yeah.
But I just thank God that I was able to come home before I lost my parents, before anything happened to my family that was, that I could, you know.
Well, Joel, you know, or you may not know this, but for those who are watching this program, this program does go into some prisons. And so right now, there are individuals who are watching this program who have been where you were. And perhaps they're feeling some of those same feelings of helplessness, and they can relate in a very real way to what you're sharing with us. I guess I would ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is in that situation?
Well, I think the first step is, as in anything, is that we have to know that we were wrong. You know, we have to realize exactly what we did. We have to be able to trade places with the ones we harmed, and understand their feelings, and what that we have put not only them through, but their families, their children. I mean, all those are important. We can, you know, not having parents can damage children for the rest of their lives. I was in prison with many that were raised on the streets, that their mothers and their fathers were crack addicts. They didn't know any better. They didn't have the benefit that I had of being raised in the Lord's church. Sure, I strayed away, but I knew where to come back to. They don't know that. You know?
Do you think there are, though, some within the prison system who want to blame their situation on somebody else? Well, you know, I'm here because I didn't have good parents when I was growing up, or because the judge didn't like me, or you know, because of the system, or because of this or that. I'm here because of alcohol. Is that something that you ever found yourself thinking as well while you were there?
In the beginning, I think everybody tries to make an excuse, and it takes a while to come to terms with it. But that's one thing about prison. It gives you time. It gives you time whether you want that time or not, to be laying there, to put yourself in other people's positions, to realize that you're there because of your actions, what you did. And
so you would say, as far as advice, number one, you know, admit your wrongdoing.
Right, quit blaming others. You know, I heard so many times, well, I wouldn't have had to shot this guy if he hadn't kept running his mouth.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, I mean, why was he running his mouth? You said something to make him run his mouth. I mean, people have such a hard time realizing that if you and I have an argument about something and it gets out of hand, then it wasn't just you. I mean, even though both of us had to say something. Both of us were wrong at one point to let it get to the point that we got out of hand. You know, I could have an argument with my wife, and we disagreed. Well, it might be the tone that I said what I said in. It might not be what I said, but the tone I used. And we have to realize where we went wrong yet.
And so you'd say to someone watching who's in that situation, number one, admit your own wrongdoing. Don't blame someone else for what you have done.
Right, we're not blameless by no means. Many people I heard say that, well, I didn't even kill this guy, but I was there and I knew about it, and you know. But there's an old saying that in prison that you can be anything you want to be in prison, because you know you can tell whatever lie you want to tell. You can tell people you were this, you were that, you know, and And whatever they say, you know, they think you're going to believe. But deep down, I believe now they may be some very minute number of cases that there are some innocent people in prison. But I believe for the majority, we did something wrong. We were wrong.
They need to admit it. What else would you, what other advice would you give to someone in that situation is contemplating their future?
Well, I'd say this is the perfect time. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're looking at 2 years, you're looking at 15, or you're looking at the rest of your life. Now is the perfect time to re-examine where you went wrong in your life and what really matters in this life. It's the simple things in this life. It's not about what we can have materialistically. There's nothing wrong with having things. I'm not saying that. But most people are focused solely upon what they can have, what they had when they were there on the street. That's all you heard is, I had this on the street. Well, when you're in there, you've got nothing. You're the same as everybody else. You've got it, you have nothing. Yeah. But now is the time to reflect back. Now is the time to re-examine your life, see where you went wrong. And now is the time to change. No, we have to begin by changing the way that we think. I mean, first and foremost, we can't see alcohol and we can't see drugs as good. We have to see them for what they are. They're evil. Yeah. They are truly evil no matter how you look at it. Yeah. And we have to see that. That's the first step. And we have to separate ourselves from those things. I mean, you get in prison, and a lot of the guys, especially the ones for drugs, they hang together, they tell these war stories, and all they do is really become better criminals for when they get out again. But they are some in there that are truly sorry. Maybe it was a moment of madness, a moment of jealousy, you know, that caused them to do what they did. And not that it wasn't wrong what they did. But deep down, they're good people. They are some good people in there. But they just made a split decision. We have to think before we act. And that's the biggest problem in this world, is that people react. They don't think and act, they react. And I know that was one of my biggest problems in my personality as a younger man. I reacted. I didn't think and act. I reacted. And when we react, especially if something that's so hurtful, that's when we go wrong. That's when we can hurt someone else or hurt ourselves even more. It's just time to look and see what is important. Why are we here on this earth? God put us here on this earth for one reason, and that's to prepare for eternity. Yeah. And there's so many that don't know that.
Well, and Solomon said, the conclusion to the whole matter is this: fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole of man. Exactly. That's why we're here. And so, you know, those who are watching this program today, perhaps some even who are incarcerated, I think you've offered some excellent advice, you know, encouraging us to acknowledge our wrongdoing, because, you know, if you're ever going to get any better, you've got to admit, you know, what you did. Right. And go forward from there. You know, you look again at the Apostle Paul, and you think about what he did in his life, all the good he did. But you know, Paul always acknowledged the wrong that he did.
Exactly.
And he didn't make any excuses about it. And he said, I feel like the chiefest of sinners. But by the grace of God, he was who he was. And I think that's the message that we need to get out to some who are watching this program today. Joel, what are some of the roller coaster emotions, and I'm sure there are a number of these, that you have while you are incarcerated? I mean, just ups and downs. What are some of the things that go on, the thought processes that you have?
Well, even after you realize that, say that you're past the point that you have admitted to yourself that you're wrong, and you're trying to do better. Yeah. You know, each day. I mean, we spent all these years learning how to do wrong. Yeah. And to be able to, want to change our life, to live a Christian life, it doesn't happen overnight. It took us years to learn how to be wrong. It's going to take a little while to learn how to live a Christian life. But it takes work. And I remember one specific time that I kept reading the Bible. I'd read it every morning, I'd read it every evening. I wanted to be such a different person. And I had to separate myself from most of the people there. You know, I had to be a loner. And I remember reading and I'd say, well, how am I ever? You know, I wake up in the morning and I'd hear cursing. You might wake up and two people be fighting at the foot of your bed. And, you know, it was just constant evil being said all day long. And you hear this all day long. And we are what we fill our mind with each day. Even though I read in the mornings and in the afternoons and in the evenings, and I said, I couldn't understand, well, how am I ever going to keep this in my heart? And I remember reading this, it just hit home with me. In Psalms 119:11, the psalmist says, I have hid thy word in my heart, thy precepts in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. And it hit me that that's the key. We have to keep those every day. And from that point on, when we go into detail, you're not allowed to take anything with you. I mean, just your clothes. You can't bring anything back in. Your strip shirts on the way out and strip shirts on the way in. But I would sneak me a piece of paper and I'd write a verse down every day, something that I felt I needed to hear. And I'd memorize those verses every day because I could memorize it and dwell on it throughout the day. And that helped me to keep His word in my heart, that I might not sin against Him. And I try to remember that, and that has stuck in my mind all these years, and that's many years ago that I read that. And that's what we have to do. We have to, that's what we have to hear every day. If we look at pornography every day, that's exactly what we're going to become. If we think about drinking or we think about drugging, that's exactly what we're going to become. But if we keep God's word in our heart and in our minds, and we separate ourselves from those people, that's the only way. And this is the perfect time. You're in there. You have no friends in prison. There's not what you could call a friend. They may want something, but they're not friends. Now, I can't say that I didn't run across a few good people in there because they were sincere about changing their lives. And there'll be some in there that seem to be sincere, but they're hoping God's going to bless them and let them out. And that's not the case because God said obey the laws of the land. Yeah. And we have to abide by that. And if we don't, we have to
pay a consequence.
Right, we'll pay that consequence.
Joel, I want to thank you so much for the time we've had today. But what I want to do before we end this program is I want to give you the opportunity to look right in there to that camera and to make any kind of appeal or any last statement you want to say to those who may be watching this program, perhaps some who are young people who are around the wrong crowd, some who are engaged in alcohol, drug abuse, perhaps some who are incarcerated right now. I want you to just have a moment where you can say whatever you want to say to those who are watching right there.
Well, there are a few things I'd like to say, and number one is to the young people. I know you're teenagers, and I know it's so easy to be drawn away to what is popular at school, what is popular at the football games. But I hope you can look in my life and see that's a dead-end road. You may be having a good time now, and you may have a good time for the next 100 times you do this. But in one split second in your life, it can all change. You can lose your life. Your friends can lose your life. You can be responsible for your friends losing their life. Do you want to carry that around for the rest of your life? To know that because of your decision, they'll be here no more. Their mothers and fathers won't have a child anymore. The children that they may have had will never have a chance to be. I beg you to please think about this. Don't ruin your life. Don't ruin someone else's life. Even if you live, you've ruined someone else's life. You'll never gain through drugs and through alcohol. You'll never have anything. I know so many people that are my age, they've never went to prison. They still deal in drugs, they still drink, but they have nothing. You'll never amount to anything in this life as long as you participate in this kind of thing. And I'd like to say some things regardless of what age you are. If you have a lot in your life that you regret, such as I do, I pray that you'll look to Jesus Christ and realize what He has done. He gave His life for the remission of our sins, and we can be forgiven. We can have that peace of mind that is worth so much. I beg of you to look at your life, to watch this program. There's a number that you can call. There's help that you can get. If you have any questions, they can be answered. You have people willing to help. And last but certainly not least, I'd like, if anyone knows me from the past, and I ever said anything verbally or hurt you emotionally or physically, I want you to know how truly sorry I am and how sorry I am for the person I used to be. Please forgive me.
Well, that's our program for this week, and we hope that it's helped to shed some light on the dangers of alcohol and its aftermath of destruction upon families all across our nation. Fabric of Family is brought to you by the Jackson Heights Church of Christ in Florence, Alabama, and in cooperation with the Gospel Broadcasting Network and Sane Video Productions. There are also a number of individuals and congregations that have helped to make this broadcast possible. So until next time, I'm Barry Gilreath Jr., your host, wishing you God's blessings and providential care until we meet again. Have a great week.